Mothers are the queens of the castle, but let's be real, it's not all ball gowns and glass slippers.
On this podcast, we're giving you a peek behind the throne at the privilege and responsibility of wearing the crown. My name is Helen Hope Kimbrough, and I'm a proud wife and mom of 2 adult sons.
And I'm Charlitta Hatch, a proud wife, married to my high school sweetheart, and a proud mom to 2 little ones. Get ready as we share jewels with each other
and you around all things connected to motherhood. Hello, everyone. Guess who's back? My girl, Charlitta from Charlotte.
Hey, everybody, I missed you.
We will be talking about AI, artificial intelligence. And in reference to that, you're the tech queen, or I consider you to be the tech queen. I also consider you to be an early adopter just based on your background and experience with just technical advances, but AI specifically. And also I would love for us to delve into how I am like on the other side of that in terms of the skepticism. So venturing into that. So what do you think?
Okay, so let's just kind of set the stage before we get like all the way in there. So, Helen, share with me just some of your views of different technology trends. Like, what are some of the things that come to mind to you when you think about just whether it's cable television or just like memorable moments of like technology for you?
Well, my first memorable moment of technology was in high school. And that's when you would have to write like your programming, you would have to write code in order to see what an end result could actually be. So that is really like my first opportunity of delving into computers. I think I was in the 11th grade. And because, I feel like you have to have like a great background in science, a great background in math, which in math I was probably better in that than in science. Sometimes I think when you are a little, I don't know, your skill set is not optimal, then that kind of shapes your thoughts on, certain things. So I would say that's my first memory. And then, other than that, of course, you would end up using, your laptop on certain things. So that was another thing going from a big screen to a laptop, which is, I love laptops today. I think I was also a late adopter of social media. My husband was the one who talked me into saying, Helen, if you want to build an audience, you want to build a brand, you really need to do social media. So I was also a late adopter on that. And really from that, he couldn't believe how my how my popular uh, nature expanded more so than his, just because I told him, I said, well, I know more people than you. And of course it would. But and so that has actually proven, to be something that has proven itself favorable for me.
Now, what about your boys? What do you remember about like them and technology and things they wanted to do? And yeah,
My boys, they just wanted a phone. And they wanted a phone other than a flip phone because I was all about the flip phone. I didn't see the reason that they would need a smartphone because, I'm picking them up from school. I don't know who they need to talk to other than me or other than their father or their grandparents. And so I also kind of waited. I was not one of those elementary school, type parents to say, oh, you can get a phone in elementary school. Nope, middle school. And in middle school, I also thought that they could handle that responsibility a little bit more. And this was still with a flip phone. And for my older son, I think he ended up getting a smartphone when he was probably eighth or ninth grade. And then my younger son was like, oh, wow, my big brother got, a smartphone. I want a phone too. And we were like, absolutely not. And he negotiated. He was like, look, if I make all A's in middle school, sixth grade, is that an opportunity for me to get like a smartphone? We were like, we'll check every semester to see if that's what you do. he was so hell bent on making certain that that happened that he did, and then he ended up getting a phone, and it was a flip phone, and he was like, "What? I cannot believe you got me a flip phone." And then shortly after that, we got him a smartphone. But of course, we had to talk about just rules of engagement, what that meant, because I just felt like apps would be distracting for them. And you know, to some degree, I think it was just based on their level of engagement with that. But then also in the early grades, they all had laptops. So it was just something that was normal for them.
I think about word processor, and I
Yes.
remember doing my homework on that, and my parents telling me how I didn't know what it was like to be on a typewriter and have to like white out and like move stuff and like but I had word processor. And then I remember AOL and like
Yep.
dial up.
Yep.
For sure fax machines.
Mhm.
And I definitely remember my parents being like super skeptical about like online banking, ATMs,
Mhm.
sending checks in the mail,
Yep.
like all of those things.
Mhm.
And definitely remember in high school where we all thought the world was going to end with Y2K.
Oh my god, I forgot all
Yeah.
about that.
Like,
Yes.
and we still are all waiting for the Jetsons,
Yeah.
right? But, like, we
Yes.
keep advancing in technology, but we still are waiting to the point where, like, I can just, like, teleport to your house. Like, right
Yes,
now, like, I could just
absolutely.
record the podcast right now because I do that. And then just, like, with cell phones, I remember, like, having to, like, wait till 9 o'clock
Mhm.
to, like, talk
Mhm.
on the phone, and then,
Yes,
like,
yes.
people like me, people hated the texting because I like to, like, hit enter off, like, everything, but, like, you can tell, like, older generations, they don't do
Mhm.
that because
Mhm.
of, like, how much it charged you to send a
Mhm.
text message, so they send you, like, a whole paragraph still, Helen,
Yes.
in the text.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, but you think about like all the skepticism, what you thought. Like, I definitely remember my parents was thinking like, "Oh, people going to be trying to send pictures through text messages. We're not going to be texting. You don't pick up the phone and call." And so now we're here at generative AI.
I
And
know.
my view is that it is a technology trend that we
Mhm.
have to have safeguards and
Mhm.
rules of what's age appropriate and
Mhm.
ethics and know how to have responsible use. Oh, let's not forget social media. You touched on it, but I think about all of those social media leaders having to go to Congress and and
Yes,
and
yes.
and how, like, the bias in the AI not AI,
Mhm.
but the bias in the algorithms of what you saw and, like, how much of a monopoly it was on, like,
Mhm.
voting and all of those
Yes.
things. But
Mhm.
ultimately, it's because you have to have guardrails and, like, responsible use and ethics, and we know there's crazy people on social media, but
Yep.
how many of us are using social media for good? So,
Mhm.
will there be
Mhm.
crazy people doing things with AI? For sure, and certainly with
Yep.
generative AI, but are they the majority? And that's the question. That's what we have to dive into.
Okay.
But
Okay.
before we go into that, just because we talked to some of these trends, so with the internet,
Mhm.
Y2K, right?
Mhm.
The initial alarm was privacy concerns, cybercrime, so being hacked,
Mhm.
and exposure to inappropriate content, right?
Okay.
Explicit content, like just
Yep.
and then that's still, I think, concerns for parents of like what your kids will have access to on the internet.
Mhm.
Some of the things that have been done to mitigate that have been cybersecurity measures. So we know that is very much a thing that's pervasive. So many companies now, I don't think there's not any major company that doesn't have a CISO, which is a chief information security officer that's
Yep.
responsible for cybersecurity. Encryption, right? So we
Mhm.
know when there's a
Mhm.
safe site now, right?
Mhm.
We know we get
Yep.
alerts and things that help us know when people are putting viruses in our computer. We have all those things that we
Mhm.
didn't have before. And then for sure, like content moderation. So there's like the ability, just like the movies,
Yep.
like, this is G, this is PG, this is explicit. You have to check
Yes.
a box. This
Yes.
put in your birthday to go to like an alcohol site, right? So parents would do things like parental control, right?
Mhm.
They will set
Mhm.
screen time limits. So I have a 7-year-old. We first we didn't have screen time limits, because when he first started using the iPad, then we started saying like, okay, you have a certain amount of time that you can have during the school week. Now we have no screen time during the school week. You can
Mhm.
only use your screen time on the weekend, and that's
What made you
only
do that?
it became too hard during the school week for him to like, for you to redirect. So when you say,
Okay.
"Okay, it's time to put the iPad up," and you have all these meltdowns and these tantrums because just like
Mhm.
and I just say it's analogous to our smartphones, right?
Yep.
Somebody were to tell you, "I'm taking your smartphone for the rest of the day," you
Mhm.
would have all kind of probably like feeling like a fish out of water, right? Like,
Yeah.
"I'm missing something.
It's
What's
an
happening?"
appendage. I mean, it really is another
Yeah.
appendage. Yep.
And I think my kid is too young to
Mhm.
have that type of
Mhm.
appendix.
Mhm.
So that's why we've reduced it. But each parent has to do what they believe is best for their child. Like, so we're saying no screen time during the week, but there are some parents who let their kids have screen time during the week. And we did. I mean, he's in the second
Mhm.
grade now, kindergarten, first grade, we let him have it.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and then monitoring your online activity. My husband audits my son's history of sites
Okay.
every
Yep.
Sunday.
Yep.
And we go through and kind of click where he is. We block things. We talk to him. Like one of the things is you are not allowed to watch anything that just has grown-ups.
Mm.
So that's
Mhm.
like how we kind of help decipher if it just has grown-ups, you
Mhm.
can't watch it. Some examples of the internet, like using Google for
Mhm.
help with homework,
Mhm.
virtual parent-teacher conferences, what we're
Yep.
doing right now,
Yep.
our virtual podcast,
Mhm.
streaming YouTube videos. So if you're watching our podcast on YouTube, it's by
Yep.
nature of the internet.
Mhm.
And so now, and the pandemic showed us, it is such a vital part of the way that we live and the way that we operate that
Absolutely.
education, work, connection, like what would we do without the internet when before we thought the world was going to end because we all had access,
Mhm. Mhm. Yep.
right?
Yep. Agreed.
Another example, because we talked about is like smartphones, right?
Mhm.
So the initial alarm was fear of addiction, which is for real, reduced face to face interaction, again, real concern, and then
Mhm.
harmful content, just like the internet, because that's
Mhm.
how you're doing it, real concern. So people have app moderations, even within your phones now. You can put in how long you want to be able to use a certain app per day. You can do your screen time tracking. I know with the iPhone, they send you a weekly report of
Yep. They do it with Android as well.
how long you were on the internet, and where you were, and then try
Mhm.
child-friendly mode. So,
Mhm.
you have the ability to lock down certain content for your kids. So parents, just like the internet, set rules for the device, delaying smartphone ownership, just like you did. I know there was like a big campaign that some of my friends told me about was like wait to 8, which is
Mhm.
8th grade in middle school.
Mhm.
It sounds like that's kind of what you follow.
Yep. Yep.
And then using screen-free zones, right? So, like, when you're at the dinner table, we don't have screens. When we're here, we don't do that, like and
Mhm.
so but that's how you mitigate it, and so
Yep.
whether you're allowed to text your family members, using apps to learn a different language like Duolingo, or setting calendar
I'm using
reminders
that right now. I use it every day.
see, for school reminders, and so now, just like we said, smartphones indispensable,
Mhm.
okay?
Mhm.
And so the last one I'll kind of give just for like just like the lay of the land that's probably not as common
Mhm.
is thinking about like online shopping. Like how
Yep.
many of us have grandparents that were like, I'm not going to be putting my card in on the internet. I'm not
Yep.
going to. I'm going to go into the store.
Yep.
One, what would we
Mhm.
have done in the pandemic? But we had concerns about fraud, identity theft, and like what would happen if we used online shopping and didn't go into stores. We have to now have secure payment systems. We have to verify a lot, make sure we're
Mhm.
human. We've
Mhm.
got these different codes on our debit cards. How many different debit cards have you got in the mail now?
Yes. Yes.
Customer reviews help you know if it's a legitimate site. Parents, you use trusted platforms, you set purchase limits. So if you let your kid have access to your
Mhm.
Amazon account, you can have a
Mhm.
threshold. And then you teach your kids about online scams. We're having a conversation right now with my son around Pokemon cards. He's into Pokemon cards now and he
Okay.
wants to trade them. And so he wants to buy some
That's a big deal.
he wants to buy some off eBay.
Yep.
And we're like, you have to make sure it's a verified seller. Yes,
Mhm.
it's a $3 gold Pokemon card on eBay, but how do you know it's real? How do you know
Mhm.
it's authentic? We got to go into GameStop. We have to go to Target. We have to go to these places.
Yeah.
You want to make sure you're getting the real deal. So
Mhm.
that's what you do as parents. So examples: Amazon, Instacart, Etsy. And now I hardly ever go into the store. I
Really? So do you do
hardly
a
ever.
lot of Amazon shopping? Do you do a lot of online shopping on Target, or what do you do?
Yes, so I have my grocery list, like all like
Oh,
our
yeah, yeah.
repeat
Yep.
items on
Mhm.
like on the grocery store, Harris Teeter.
Mhm.
I do pickup.
Yep.
For Target, I pay for the delivery. So I
Mhm.
always make sure I have $35 worth of stuff and just like add it to the cart. And then that comes in 2 hours. So it's like even quicker than Amazon, even though now
Yep.
Amazon has same day delivery. It's certainly Amazon. But I feel like when you're like a busy mom, all these spirit weeks are coming up for the holidays. It's like,
Yep.
oh, I need a Christmas sweater. Like you can just type in Christmas sweater, size
Mhm.
8 boys, and
Yep.
you have it there. When you go into
Yep.
the mall, you gotta actually, like, look and figure it out, but,
Yep.
like, I am heavily dependent on online shopping.
Yeah, I will say that I'm more of an online shopper too, because first of all, I don't even like to shop. So I can count like on my hands the amount of time that I may go into a store. I mean, just for me, myself and clothes. And so I'm a big online shopper specifically because I know my size and all of those things. And then I do a lot of online shopping for my boys if they need certain things. I furnish my son's apartment primarily through IKEA. And forwarded all of those things to him. And, if my parents need something, my mom, she's very funny because she'll say, Helen has Prime. Because she has Prime. Tracy, do you have Prime? Oh, you don't? No. Okay. Well, I need to go to Helen because she has Prime because she knows she's going to get her packages real quick.
And we need Tracy to get Prime. This is just a plug, Tracy. I know you're listening. So, a few trends, just we won't go through all the details that I went through, but I want you to reflect on social media. The cloud, where all your
Yep.
photos are and your backup of
Hmm.
your computers, GPS
Hmm.
systems, credit cards
Yeah.
and digital payments, electric vehicles, video streaming services, wearable technology, online learning, digital photography, and autonomous technology. So think about your Roomba.
Yep.
Just think about all those technology trends, all of the initial alarms and concerns, and how many of those concerns are very similar to what you may feel about generative AI. So, does that mean you should not have concerns? No, because a lot of those same concerns that you had, they are still very real, relevant
And very
concerns like the
valid.
internet.
Yep. Hmm.
They didn't go
Yep.
away.
Yep.
There's just different mitigations in place for them.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so now we have to figure out those mitigations. But we have
Hmm.
to understand that all of these trends have continued to evolve and they're going to feel more and more evasive, more and more personal, more and more human like, right? That's the bigger
Mhm,
concern with
mhm.
generative
Yep,
AI, right?
yep,
So
because that's what
now
I actually put on here. I put, the misinformation regarding AI, generated images. I know for publishing projects, we will request if people would like for us to use a generated image on their behalf for book covers and that type of thing. If they tell us no, we don't use it, but we do want them to know that that's an option for them.
that's the mitigation, right?
Mm,
That's the ethics piece of like
mhm,
disclosing like this content may have been used with generative AI, right? But
mhm,
that's no different than citing your sources and not plagiarizing, right?
mhm,
When you
mhm.
use the encyclopedia or you're using the internet or online library or actual library book, like you have to cite. So how do you treat generative AI like it's a source? So that
Yeah.
it's ethical, it's disclosed, and people understand what was yours original content, what you got assistance from. And
Mhm,
it's okay to get assistance, right? Unless
mhm.
it's explicitly said for you not to. But
Yep.
how do you do that in an ethical way? So we know that research indicates that Black parents may be more cautious in allowing their children to use certain technologies,
Mhm.
particularly those involving internet access and social media. This caution is influenced by concerns about online safety, exposure to inappropriate content, and the potential for cyberbullying. Okay. So there's four main factors that research has shown. One is from the Pew Research Center, where they talked about the digital divide in technology adoption. And
Mhm.
they showed that Black and Hispanic adults in the US are less likely than white adults to own a traditional computer or have high speed internet at home.
Mhm.
As of 2021, 80% of white adults reported owning a desktop or laptop computer, compared to 69% of Black adults and 67% of Hispanic adults.
Mhm.
So one could infer that also less exposure makes you more cautious, right?
Yep.
But that is attributed to the digital divide and technology adoptions, which really kind of goes into kind of like the literacy when we just sat here and
Mhm.
talked about how
Yep.
dependent we are on technology,
Mhm.
school, how we work in our community. So not just being able to use it in your everyday life just
Mhm.
starts to kind of like it's almost like a wealth gap, a digital wealth.
Yep. Yep. And I would also say that it's around cost factors too. So it costs to have a laptop, it costs to pay for Wi Fi. So when we talk about those percentages, I mean, some people may have to have their monies go to something that they need versus what they want, which is also why that digital divide is so apparent in those populations.
That's why some of the work that I get to do now in my new role is actually really advocating for technology as a utility,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so just like some people view education as a privilege
Yep.
and not a right,
Mhm.
there are now, at one point, technology was viewed as a privilege, but
Mhm.
definitely what the pandemic showed us is that it is a right. It is a
Yes.
necessity. It is necessary to thrive or
Mhm.
survive, really
Yep.
survive in this
Mhm.
country,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
now we talk about the cost and the access to that
Mhm. Mhm.
and
Yep.
how it
And
disproportionately impacts our people.
absolutely. And there were also, like, during the pandemic, since we were talking about that, and we saw that there was a heightened need to have access to laptops, computers, Wi-Fi, for educational, but also for work. And what many companies found, specifically in our area here, is, of course, they were making certain that students in schools, children had access to Wi-Fi and laptops, only to find out that some of their employees did not have them. And it was a surprise, right? It was a shock. And it was just like, oh my God, our employees have been working here with no access and not in a way that they thought that they would have it. And so some eyebrows were definitely raised around who has access to computers and technology during that time.
And so then you think about, as a parent, you can't give access what you don't have access to.
Yep.
But what is our role if you have the access, whether it's going to the library or if a church has something or what, to
Hmm.
make sure that you're exposing, but exposing with the guardrails that we talked about?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the second thing that was interesting, it also came from the Pew Research Center, is that there are just overall parental concerns about online safety, which we've already addressed. But there was a
Hmm.
2020 survey conducted by them that found across different racial and ethnic groups that there was expressed concerns about children's screen time and exposure to inappropriate online content. However, Black parents were particularly vigilant, with a significant number implementing strategies such as monitoring their children's online activities and using parental controls to mitigate potential risk.
Hmm.
And so you start to think about, like, why, right?
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so I think when we think about being on the internet, it's a community.
It is.
And we have, I believe, and this is generalized, but this is our podcast, so we can say what we want. I think we may have stricter rules in our broader non online community because we're trying to keep our kids safe. We know
Hmm.
we can't afford for them to be at someone's house and they don't understand what it means to have a Black boy, right? Like
Yep.
with my son, like at first I was like, no guns. And then he wants to play with water guns. And now our rule is you cannot play with a water gun if mommy and daddy are not there.
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
it's like we've evolved as he's got older, but we still have those strict guardrails. And there are
Yep.
significant number of my friends that think that is a very insane rule. But then
Mhm.
you think Trayvon Martin, rest in peace. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't
Yeah.
afford for him to be playing in your yard.
Mhm.
And it seems like fun when it's your kids, but when it's my kid, it's a real
It
gun.
looks different. Yep.
Right?
Mhm.
So that's our rules in our community. So I am not surprised that in an online community, when we know if our kids get abducted or
Mhm.
kidnapped or get caught up in some online chat and go off with somebody, the likelihood of them getting the media attention that they deserve and us finding them are smaller percentages
I
than
was going
our
to say it's
white
very
counterparts.
limited. Yep.
So we have to keep our kids safe because it's a community, and we have to keep
Mhm.
our kids safe in our non-online community. So
Yep.
that's how I think about that.
One of the other areas, when I was talking about skepticism, and I'm kind of laughing because everything that you shared, I'm like, okay, I do that. Oh, okay, I do that too. Like I do all the things that you said. So, but one of the things that, when you're in at work, whether it's nonprofit, corporate, whatever sector you are in, and even in college, we talk a lot about AI and how should we utilize it in terms of writing papers, in terms of putting forth resources, as you mentioned earlier, around it. And some schools are looking to make certain that this work has to be your work. And I think I'm a proponent of this work has to be your work. But will that wane? Will, that increase? Who knows? I don't know. So I think that's probably another area of my concern is I want to make certain that this is the work that you presented, or if I'm interviewing a person, I want to make certain that, oh yeah, this is you who wrote it and not AI that generated and wrote it. So any commentary around that?
Okay, so let's talk about the people who bought book reports, the people who would buy papers off the internet,
Hmm.
right? The
Hmm.
people who copy word for word out of some
Plagiarism.
spark notes,
Yep.
right? And
Hmm.
it didn't cite, right? So that's a habit, right? So the
Hmm.
first thing I'll say, if you a cheater, you a cheater, right? So if you're gonna cheat, you're gonna cheat on your spouse and on your paper. Okay. So let's call that there. So that's where the ethics come into place. Now, what
Okay.
I will acknowledge is that with generative AI specifically,
Mhm.
it is harder to detect because it's gotten
Mhm.
smarter.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But
Mhm.
but also technology has advanced and gotten smarter, right? So
Mhm.
we don't have to use dial-up internet now. It's
Mhm.
faster, it's
Mhm.
seamless. And if we have to wait a second for a page to load, we think something's wrong, right?
Yep.
So cheating,
Mhm.
people have gotten smarter over time, even before generative AI, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
generative AI should be used as a resource, just
Mhm.
like the encyclopedia, just like books in the library, and just like Google.
Yep.
We know that there will be people who do bad things with it. And
Mhm.
so we have to have policies and guardrails, just like every teacher and professor already has a cheating and plagiarizing policy. Now,
Okay.
again, it will be harder for them to detect with generative AI, but the concept and the principle is still the same,
Okay.
right? I mean, would you agree?
Um, well, the concept, yes, yes. Mhm.
And that it's harder to detect,
Oh, it definitely is harder to detect. Yep.
but
Mhm.
but the concept is the same.
Yep.
And so, let's actually like gotta go into generative AI, right? So
Mhm.
generative AI is a subset of artificial intelligence. So it's a subset of AI. And so a couple of things I like to like give these examples, and you've heard them before, Helen, but like when you get on the elevator and the elevator knows you're there and it doesn't smash you,
Mhm.
artificial intelligence, a form of it,
Okay.
right? And
Mhm.
that was also invented by a black man.
Yep.
Um, when you go to the bathroom to wash your hands and the
Mhm.
water knows that you're there,
Mhm.
that's artificial intelligence. But with black people, you have a hard time getting that water to work. You keep fumbling, and then somehow you turn your hand that way and then it comes on. Well, that's bias in how the product was designed. There's
Yep.
also research that shows right now with automatic driving cars that people of color are hit at higher rates because they were not included in the testing. So we
Mhm.
have to make sure that we're participating, that we're leaning in, that our voices are at the table because
Yep.
these products are going to continue to be developed and we are
Mhm.
here. We exist and we matter. And so
Yep.
we have to be included in the development of these things. So there's
Absolutely.
artificial intelligence. But with generative AI, they have distinct characteristics and societal implications, particularly due to its ability to create original content, like you said, content such as text, images, and videos.
Mhm.
And so there's people have concerns, right, about misinformation. So
Yep.
generative AI tools like ChatGPT
Mhm.
raise fears about potential to create realistic yet misleading content, such as fake news
I
and
was getting
doctored
ready to say, which
images.
we saw in our political system, this currently.
Yep. There's ethical concerns. So the
Mhm.
ability to mimic human creativity.
Mhm.
We'll get into debates about intellectual property, plagiarism, and devaluation of creative industries. I know in my schooling, I was doing some research and we had a conversation about asking ChatGPT to act as a Black mother and
Oh,
to
yeah.
respond to our responses as a Black mother. And so we got into this healthy debate of whether or not we should treat it like a human subject because it's different
Mhm.
protocols you have to sign
Mhm.
off on, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
that is a real thing around like the ethical concerns. And you have to make your judgment, me as a researcher, parents as parents, like workers as workers, creatives as creatives of like the ethics around it. And we know
Yep.
everybody's ethics are not the same.
Absolutely.
People are worried about their jobs,
Mhm.
right? We know that because the AI models, they're trained on large data sets, but
Mhm.
those large data sets have bias in the data because bias is everywhere, right? And
Yep.
so we get into that critical race theory where we
Mhm.
first in this conversation would agree that if racism is a part of all the systems, then of course it's going to be in the data. It's inherent. It's not malicious, but there's going to be bias in that data,
It's gonna be
which
bias in the data, and I think, eventually or over time, who knows, it could happen within the next 4 years that just like people are pulling, back books around, banning books or curriculum or minimizing DEI and all of those things, I feel like that could also be prevalent with AI.
oh, 1,000%.
Mhm.
And it'll just be another industry that's
Yep.
being attacked.
Yep.
And then child safety, which is, I think, a universal concern of all different types of technologies, right?
Mhm.
So, how are the different ways that people are starting to mitigate? So, first, there's the transparency feature. So, many platforms have introduced disclaimers, watermarking, or content origin
Okay.
indicators to distinguish AI generated content.
Mhm.
From an ethics perspective, companies have developed ethical frameworks to guide AI development, ensuring the alignment with principles like fairness, privacy, and accountability.
Mhm.
So a lot of companies do have either AI guidelines or AI policies. I even know down to a university that has specific tools that are authorized or not authorized.
Yep.
And so, there that it's coming about. But again, a policy is only as good as the person who's going to follow it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
Bias reduction. So
Mhm.
efforts were made to diversify training data and implement
Mhm.
fairness testing. So we're talking about how it still continues to evolve of making sure that data and the people involved in them are more inclusive. And then there are certain tools now to like block inappropriate or harmful output. So similar to social media, kind of leveraging some of those frameworks. And of course, like general like user education, like people are getting more aware and smarter about how it works, which
Mhm.
then allows for more policies, more guidelines, more processes to
Mhm.
be created.
So are there classes, like when people learn how to use a computer, when they learn how to, use different apps? Yes, you can go on YouTube. Yes, you can, Google all of these things. But are there also classes that people, if they really want to understand like the background around AI and how they can utilize it for themselves or for their family or for their career, are those in place as well?
Yes, and one thing I will call out is some of us are using AI tools and we don't realize it. So if you've
Mhm.
ever used Grammarly,
Yep.
that's
Mhm.
an AI tool.
Yep.
And did you take training for that?
Yeah, but I've used it, rarely, so yes.
But you did, but
But
you
yeah,
know,
but
and
I
so
did not. No, I did not.
yeah, so there are tools that we're using that are AI tools. Now,
Mhm.
when it comes to like how to maybe use them more efficiently,
Yep.
there are classes. I know there are classes that I've seen about AI prompting, and so that's
Okay.
specifically for ChatGPT.
Okay.
And some things that you can do, like I told you, like you could tell ChatGPT act as a black mother and
Mhm.
questions, or act as a author and
Mhm.
provide me some examples on X.
Yep.
So there's different tips and tricks you can use to really use it efficiently, and we can kind of
Mhm.
go into that. But yes, there are trainings.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
so from a parent perspective, one thing I would say, as we kind of just talk about generative AI, like all the technology, have the conversation that's age appropriate with your kids. Monitor your children as they interact with it, because they don't know. We're teaching them everything, right? So
Mhm.
we have to make sure they use it safe and appropriately and ethically. And then if you don't know as a parent, just like if you don't know about social media, if you don't know about whether they should be listening to this rap music, you ask somebody. You can get the information.
Yep.
Teach your kids how to identify and question authenticity, to make sure that they are aware, just like with the Pokemon cards. Like,
Mhm.
how do you make
Mhm.
sure that this is real? This is actually a source. Even if you ask ChatGPT something and they tell you it's a source, how do you go check the checker? And you
Yep.
go look at that source, right?
Mm.
And go read it for yourself. Like my dad always said, you need to know the word of God for yourself. Like, don't just listen to the pastor. If they
Yep.
say this is Habakkuk 2:14, you go
Yep.
look and see what it says for yourself. It will be the same way with ChatGPT. They say this is the source, go check it. Because sometimes people they make up sources.
Well, that and you also just want to make certain that you're utilizing critical thinking skills when you are utilizing all of this kind of technology or chat, GPT, AI. I think that's another area where I was concerned. Like, we're always saying how AI is getting smarter, but you never hear people saying that people are getting smarter. I'm like, I need for people to get smarter. Yes, we're utilizing this as tools, but how do we also become smarter?
Well, I would say it's if AI is getting smarter, people are getting smarter because they're the ones developing it. They're the ones creating it. And just it is still if and when we're talking about generative AI, if we're really talking about ChatGPT,
Mhm,
right? Or are we talking about other tools? But if we're talking about
mhm.
ChatGPT, it is still what you do with the information,
Yep.
right? So again, if you just gonna copy and paste it, you would have just copied and pasted from Google. You would have just copied and pasted from Spark Notes. You would have
Mhm,
just paid somebody to write your paper if that's how you roll, right?
mhm, mhm.
If you're using it to help you pull information quicker, right?
Yep.
Just like as a different form of Google, and now
Mhm.
you're going to take it and synthesize it, analyze it, and put your own twist on it, and then cite and reference that you used it.
Yep.
Like that would be the way you would use Google.
Mhm.
That would be
Yep.
the way you would use the database at the library.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
how are we as parents teaching our children to be
Mhm.
ethical in the way in which we use it?
Yep.
And
And
it's going to
also
be
and
harder
also
to detect.
teaching my parents, about the same thing. Because just like we teach our young children, like our parents who are older than us, a lot of these things weren't around. So my mom is more apt to utilizing things. My dad is like, I'm not interested at all. So, but she is, ahead of the time. And I also think because she was an educator, where educators have to use so many different types of resources, that she's more open, to it as well. But yeah. Hmm.
Creative collaboration, so you can
Yep.
encourage children to use
Hmm.
generative AI as a tool for learning and creativity.
Hmm.
Um, so that can be something where you can even like start to write a story and then ask them for feedback on your story. Like, do I have all the elements of a plot? If not, can you show me what I'm missing, right? Like
Mhm.
in a way in which you're interacting.
Yep.
You set boundaries as the parent. And again, that's where we're setting boundaries everywhere, but they may or may
Okay.
not follow them. And then just promote that literacy piece, discussing the
Mhm.
ethical and social implications, the importance of using it responsibly, how it represents you as a family when
Yeah.
we are irresponsible, right?
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
if you show out on social media, you on there in a bikini, you are representing the Hatch family. Okay. And it impacts you for college and it impacts you for this. And if
Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
caught up in generative AI and you cheat, you may not be able to get into college,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
I mean, I
Yep.
don't know of any case like that right now, but just saying, like, if you're ethically misusing things, it can follow
Mhm.
you. And we
Yeah.
have to have those critical conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
Well, Charlita, I mean, I just feel like this has been like valuable content because it's something where I knew that we needed to talk about it just because everybody's talking about it. And you have some people who, again, are early adopters, late adopters, some people who are skeptical, some people who are, ready to bounce all the way in. And I'm laughing because I said earlier, you got me even using CapCut now. That's a whole nother story. And I'm like, okay,
and you
Chat.
like it and it's easy and you didn't need training.
Well, I won't say that. I have been going to YouTube just to figure out how to use it, and to do like a voiceover for just a video that I just sent out this week regarding the podcast. And it was better than I thought it was. And I was like, I don't know how it's going to show up, but I tried it and I'm like, oh, okay. It didn't hurt as bad as I thought it would. Let's just say that.
I love that. And so I would say, just kind of as we're wrapping up, we have to, as Black parents, be optimistic
Mm-hmm.
about the potential
Mm-hmm.
that generative AI can use for the positive. So, just like
Mm-hmm.
social media, like the connectivity, the community, being able to share and
Oh
feel like
yeah.
you see people, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
then that also doesn't replace seeing people in person.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how can we use generative AI to address system inequalities in education and how
Mhm.
different learning opportunities can come from generative AI?
Yep,
We know that there are significant concerns about bias in AI systems, but that's bias everywhere,
yep,
right? And so we have to make sure that we don't take such caution that we're not included in eradicating those
mhm,
biases and those misuses.
yep,
Um,
and having more people like you at the table to represent us in some of these biased cases.
and as parents, you can't sit out. You can't say, I'm not going to use this. I'm not going to learn this, not in my house, because you become unaware of the ways in which your children are using technology. You got to stay with the trends with them. How many parents got on social media just because their kids were on there? You got to do
Mhm,
the same thing with generative AI, so
mhm.
that you understand this. And I have also found just some articles that there are some teenagers that are interacting with these tools for emotional support,
Oh, okay.
like as
Oh,
a camaraderie, right? And
okay. Mhm,
confessing and confiding in them. So,
mhm,
again, just like if they were going into some online chat room, right? You
mhm.
want to be the person that they're talking to. So you need to know where they are and what they're doing.
Yep.
And then lastly, kind of just some of the implications when we approach it with optimism, just being vigilant
Mhm,
for all technology uses, not just generative AI.
mhm.
And so that means we have to stay informed, we have to have open dialogue with our kids, and we have to advocate for fairness in all of these different tools. We cannot afford to sit out.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You just heard our tech expert, Charlita Hatch, on AI, artificial intelligence. We needed her. We needed her voice in the space. We needed her expertise. And I hope for this podcast, you see some areas that you can utilize, but that you can also just be aware, like she said, and educate yourself around AI. It's here. So there's no point in getting left behind. how can you just, continue to be aware and continue to have the knowledge so that you have it for yourself, like she said, but then you also have it for your family.
We will do another podcast
We
episode
will.
for sure, because I also want to just help moms figure out how to incorporate AI to make your life easier.
Hmm.
And so we will definitely do that. And so I thank you for allowing me to share a topic that I'm passionate about, not just generative AI, but just technology in general and our
Yes.
role as Black mothers and Black people in making sure that we're shaping it so that
Yes.
it works for us the way it works for everybody else. Just
Hmm.
so, with that, be sure to like, comment, subscribe anywhere you're listening to the Behind the Throne podcast. And we will see you on our next episode. Thank you for listening to the Behind the Throne podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and comment below with your feedback. Check out future episodes from us as we discuss motherhood from babies to adults.